Hello there and welcome to today's video. It's been such a long time since I vlogged anything that it feels kind of weird talking into a camera, so yeah, let's hope I get kind of used to it again soon. So I think today what I'm going to do is firstly to answer a few questions that I've received, and I think today I'm going to focus mainly on kind of polymer clay stuff. So yeah, I'll do that first of all, then I'll move on to a bit of a process video. I made the characters out of Hot Fuzz quite recently, and I've been really wanting to make them for such a long time because I made Shaun and Ed out of Shaun of the Dead a few years ago now, which is mad, but I really enjoyed making those and I loved how they turned out. So I've been meaning to work on a couple more of the Cornetto trilogy characters, so yeah, it was really nice to get stuck into those. And I think lastly I'll have maybe a bit of a chat about why I've been away. So yeah, let's get started on some questions. So then, now on to some questions, and apologies if there's any kind of glare on my glasses. It's a bit tricky at times, and I try and get my face in all sorts of weird positions to avoid it, but it's not always possible. But anyway, on to the first question. And the first is, thank you for your videos. They're very informative and well presented, which is good to know. Where would you recommend as the best place to buy these clays in the UK? And this person is specifically asking about Kato polyclay as they're looking to make jewellery. And to be honest, I don't really use Kato clay at all, actually. I've got a histamine intolerance, so I just react to all sorts of bizarre stuff, really. And because poly clay or Kato clay has a very distinct smell, it's kind of like a new doll kind of smell, so it's not offensive or anything, it's just I just get a kind of histamine response to it. So I don't buy it. I do, however, buy Femo Professional, and I also use a bit of Sculpting here and there as well, so I tend to get mine from all over the place, really. Mainly eBay or Amazon, occasionally Hobbycraft if I need some desperately. But I've also heard of a store called Playarounds in the UK. It's an online store. I've not used it, but I've seen it mentioned a few times. So if you've used it and it went well, let me know down below. And if you're a user of Kato polyclay, it'd be really useful to perhaps share with us down below where you get your clay from, as I don't use it, so I don't know, unfortunately. And the next question is, thank you for your videos. We found them a great help in making our topper. That's really nice to know, actually. I recently uploaded a wedding cake topper tutorial on my YouTube channel, and it's quite a mammoth tutorial or class, really, as it's in 4 parts. So if you're interested in learning how to make a wedding cake topper, I'll leave that linked down below. And can I just ask why you sometimes use liquid Sculpey and sometimes liquid Femo? I don't actually use liquid Sculpey. What I do use is Sculpey clay softener, which is really useful to use if your clay is really hard and crumbly. You can add just the tiny bits and then work it through the clay in order to make it kind of usable again. And also I use it to kind of smooth over surfaces. It's just really useful sometimes in model making, usually when I'm trying to connect an arm to a shoulder. It's quite useful sometimes just to put a tiny dab on your finger just to really try and sort of coax the pieces together so it looks quite neat, really. And I do use liquid Femo, and I tend to use that when I'm trying to combine 2 pieces together, which is usually a body and a pair of legs. So I find if I put just a tiny dab of liquid Femo, it just secures the piece better when it's baking, and afterwards, really, it makes it nice and solid. So yeah, I use liquid Femo and Sculpey clay softener. And the next question is, I bought an Atlas 150 and that's a pasta machine or a clay conditioning machine, and I've also got one of those. And when I used it on the lowest setting, number 1, and I think the lowest setting is actually 0, but anyway, in the beginning it was so quiet. Now it makes a clicking noise on the dial side, and is that normal? Gosh, I've never had that happen, to be honest, so I'm not entirely sure why that's happening. And I agree, that's probably quite annoying, really. I do wonder if that might be an issue with the machine needing oiling. I know that you are supposed to oil pasta machines very occasionally, and I've never done it, to be honest, because I've never, firstly, known how to do it, or two, could be bothered really. But I think if I had an issue like that, it might be worth just kind of researching that further. And again, I'm going to put it out to the YouTube polymer clay hive mind, really. If you've had that issue happen to your machine and you've been able to troubleshoot as to why, it would be really useful if you could let us know down below, because I'm intrigued myself actually as to why that's happening, and yeah, how you go to resolve the issue, really. So by all means, leave your comments down below on that. Oh, and I think the same person asked a different question on pasta machines as well, just on how long they last. This one bought one, it lasted a month, so gosh, that's it's never nice when that happens, actually, because I bought a really cheap unit once, because I think I ordered a machine in, and the postal delivery time was too long, so in the meantime I just got a cheap unit from Argos, and I did put a video on my channel about it at the time. It was just terrible. It was really sort of tough to use, and there was loads of noise that came out of it. It was just awful. So needless to say, that one didn't last very long at all. My first Sculpting machine lasted years, I think about 4 years. The second Sculpting machine, I basically messed that up because I put some plasticine through it, which I would never recommend you do because it will wreck your machine. Then I got that really cheap unit, which was a waste of time, and I've had my Marcato Atlas machine ever since, and it's been just amazing, really. So for me personally, I'd recommend the Atlas machine because it's been the best I've ever used, but I guess it's the luck of the draw, unfortunately. Now, I was going to answer another question and I've lost it. So it was something like, I'm really into model making, and I find that when I make hands... Sorry, there's a tractor. I'm really into model making, and I find that when I make hands, they're too brittle and the fingers fall off. What can I do? And without seeing the model, it's really difficult because I can only go on that information, but I'm surmising that the models are quite small, and therefore the hands are quite small. So it's something that's never happened to me because my clay aesthetic is quite chunky, actually. My models are all sort of, well, yeah, quite chunky. So yeah, any kind of element within the model itself is fairly secure, really. So I would say that if you believe that your hands are just too fragile or too small, that's going to cause vulnerability within the clay. So I would say that's why your fingers are breaking off. So perhaps you want to kind of revisit your style or your aesthetic and add a bit of bulk to it, just so the elements are just a bit stronger, really. It's all learning, though. It's I'm sure these things happen to a lot of people. It's just fortunate it's not really happened to me, so fingers crossed it doesn't in the future either. So I hope you found that all useful in some way, and if you do have any questions about polymer clay or about my artwork, by all means leave those down below or on any of my videos, and I'll probably do another video like this at some point, just answering as best I can, really. And because I only know what I know, there's going to be various questions that I just don't know the answer to, so I can always put them out to the community here, because I know a fair few folks are polymer clay artists themselves with a host of experience, so you never know, we might be able to answer that question for you. So yeah, leave your questions below one or in any video. So now I'm going to show you how I made Danny from Hot Fuzz. Hope you enjoyed that. It was really nice to get back into some model making, because the last year has been all about polymer clay paintings actually, so it was really kind of interesting reminding myself how to make a model really that's you know, quite a solid structure and doesn't fall over, which is yeah, often the tricky part. So yeah, I was kind of super pleased how they turned out anyway. So I just thought before I ended this vlog I'd give you a bit of an update as to where I am on my health, etc. Because I know on the last video where I mentioned about peri-menopause, a few of you kind of commented that you were going through similar issues really, and yeah, I just wanted to do a little follow-up today. I have got plans to do a kind of full video on it at some point, but you know, it's just getting the kind of headspace to do that, because you know, I've got a dreadful memory, and it's about trying to remember, you know, various things that I've been through really. But basically I started perimenopause symptoms around 8 years ago, and I've just had the kind of worst time with it really. I think because I didn't have a mum when I was growing up, all throughout my adult life, I've not really had anybody to kind of warn me about perimenopause, and I've got no kind of older female relations that are certainly local to me anyway, so it's something that I just hadn't given any thought to really. I've not had children, so I've not given a lot of thoughts even to women's health really throughout my life. So yeah, it was just so unexpected. I know it sounds ridiculous that, you know, every woman will go through menopause, you know, at some point, but it was just, you know, the furthest thing from my mind really. And when I was 40, I started having night sweats, and that led into joint pain and yeah, just various other kind of annoying stuff really. And yeah, just over the years I've had all sorts of just weird and wonderful symptoms really. And I think the most annoying one that I've got now is a histamine intolerance, or one of the most annoying, because there are a few. And it's fairly common with menopause or perimenopause. It's just you don't hear anything about it really. And basically my tongue will burn. I mean, it burns to some degree most of the time anyway, or at least tingles, but I get a really burnt mouth whenever I have something that, you know, my body's not happy with, which is the majority of foods. And it also burns with smells as well. So, you know, if somebody's burning something outside, or I know with spring coming, there's going to be more and more pollen around. So it gets to the point that in August, I can barely go out the door because it's so painful and it affects my eyes and all sorts of stuff. But as I say, it's quite boring. So I'll go into perhaps more detail about that at some point. I've also got a neurological disorder, and the more I think about it, the more I think it's connected to menopause, because that started around 4 years ago and it's related mainly to food again. So that's, yeah, it's just really difficult being able to eat. And recently, this has happened a couple of times, but um, I've just not had enough oil in my diet, because I don't eat any processed food, or very little processed food. So it's really difficult to remind myself to get enough oil in my diet. So my skin all dries out, and it gets, or when it gets bad, it affects my eyes as well. So I'm, you know, trying to drink oil at the moment, which is just ridiculous, isn't it? So I'm also experiencing quite a lot of joint pain at the moment, and that combines with my kind of shoulder injury. It's made editing films really difficult over the last few weeks, so that's why I've been quiet. So hopefully, once I'm able to get into a better groove, I can, you know, get back to vlogging properly, because I'd like to create more kind of artistic videos, things that are a bit more, you know, aesthetically kind of pleasing really, but it's difficult to do when you're kind of not well really, or not performing well anyway. So that's my plan for this year anyway, is to create vlogs that are a bit more kind of interesting and a bit more kind of visually appealing. But as I say, it's just getting the time and the inclination and the motivation to do that. So yeah, it was just a little add-on really for those out there that are also experiencing perimenopause. It's just difficult, isn't it, getting resources or even people kind of to talk about it openly is difficult. I know Davina McCall has been excellent at this over the last year or two. I find her Instagram account to be a huge source of information and inspiration. She does a post every Monday on, I think it's Menopause Monday, she calls it, on sort of bits of information about menopause. So yeah, I'd heartily recommend that you give her a follow on Instagram. I personally think that women will be talking way more about menopause in the next year or two. Really because I think millennials are amazing at communication. If you take, for instance, neurodiversity, hardly anybody used to talk about autism or ADHD, except in kind of negative ways, really. And there's just so much more information out there now. And I find it just really inspiring, because I think millennials particularly are trailblazers when it comes to just putting information out there. And I think once a lot of them start hitting menopause, then there'll be way more conversations about it, and, you know, much more information out there about what to expect. Because I think Gen Xers, such as myself, are still a little reluctant to share, unfortunately. But hopefully over the next few years there'll just be a whole raft of information out there that, you know, just really isn't there at the moment. And also I want to acknowledge women that have been through surgical menopause in their 20s and 30s. You know, it's not just a middle-aged thing. And also those that transition from one gender to another. It's about being mindful that it's not just women in our 40s that go through this. You know, it's yeah, just trying to be mindful to be inclusive, really. So yeah, I hope you found that in some way informative. I'm just aware that I'm babbling now because there's just so much information to share about that. But as I say, I'd like to do a more structured video on it at some point. So, you know, it can be a bit of a talking point perhaps. So I think that's it for today anyway. So thanks for watching. Give it a like if you got this far. And yeah, fingers crossed. I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.